It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everyone. Hello, baseball fans. Welcome back to the Locked On MLB podcast YouTube channel. Easy for you to say. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. Today, which is the 9th day of August 2021, I am bringing into the fold a friend of the podcast and a fellow Locked On podcaster who has one of the hardest jobs in all of sports media, but he does a tremendous job doing. He follows the Colorado Rockies every day. And at the trade deadline, we all looked to see if he was traded elsewhere. But no, he's still with the Rocks, and now he's here on Locked On MLB. Let's welcome in the host of Locked On Rockies. It's Paul Holden. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. I mean, especially good week in terms of Rockies baseball. So I'm feeling good. It's very, very hot though in the Pacific Northwest. So that is the only downside.
Okay, I want everyone to just note one thing. Our dear friend Paul Holden understands that Denver is not part of the Pacific Northwest. He himself is in the Pacific Northwest, but is a Rockies fan. Mm-hmm. I didn't want anyone thinking, what does he think Denver's in the Pacific Northwest? And it's like, but we're here in Pasadena, or as I like to call it, New England. And so I get it that there's some people who are moved around and everything like that. And for those of you who don't follow Locked On Rockies, you should, because Paul's doing a tremendous job with the show, especially the build-up to the trade deadline, or as I like to call it, the prom and carry, where everyone thought one thing was going to happen and then another thing happened. How you hanging in there, buddy?
I left the trade deadline very frustrated. Because I was hoping that this team was going to take a different direction, that they were finally going to embrace that we need to move on from the competitive window we thought and try something new. But we got the Rockies that Rockies fans know and love. I mean, I wasn't certain Trevor Story was going to be traded at any point. I kind of figured the Mets were going to try to make a big splash to get John Gray and Trevor Story. I thought that if they were put in a bundle together, the Rockies could get what they wanted in terms of a haul back. But then the stories come out that John Gray doesn't want to leave Colorado. The Rockies love this starting rotation. They love John Gray. Rockies fans love John Gray. So once I saw that, I was like, I'm hoping a move's going to come, but the market didn't seem hot. And then, of course, the story comes out, and the Rockies probably wanted way more than most teams were willing to give up at that point.
Yeah, I want to just point out the Story trade. I thought he was going to go to the Yankees, especially after the Mets acquired Baez from the Chicago Cubs. I thought Trevor Story was going to possibly land in Queens. Mm-hmm. But then when I saw the Baez trade, I really felt, because the Mets infield has some injury issues, and we saw today that there was an injury report. I'm going to traderumors.com. It was I think it was who just was put on the disabled list there. Anthony Rizzo went on. One of their infielders went on. This is was it Gleyber Torres?
I think it was. I don't know.
Look, it's this sort of research that you really love to have on the YouTube channel. Yes, Gleyber Torres is on the injured list for the Yankees, and obviously they didn't know that was coming up, but obviously no one goes on the injured list on the 9th without knowing there's maybe something possibly wrong earlier. But I had twins, and now I only have one child, because I was so positive that Trevor Story was going to be traded that I bet one of my sons. I figured it was, it was the easiest trade I ever made. So I miss my boy. He's a good boy, but they held tight, and It's strange. And I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie to you. I can't sit here. I'm not on this channel to fib. It is strange that they stood pat, but it's weird that it seems that after the trade deadline came and went, and people were looking around, and it's a bit of a Left Behind movie, like who got who got
Right.
raptured up or not, and so like, oh, we're still here. Um, uh, they seem to be calming down a little bit with the Rockies, and they seem to be playing a little bit better baseball recently.
Yeah, the Rockies have played great baseball. I mean, the storyline of them being a great home team continues. They
Right.
they they had a road stretch right after the All-Star game where it wasn't great, but in terms of road performances from the Rockies this year, it was better than what we've seen. I believe they picked up four out of 9 wins on the road before heading
Mhm.
home, and they just won 5 of 6 at home. If the Rockies were just simply a bad team on the road, they would probably be around 500, maybe even right over it. Not going to go ahead and put them in any wild card discussions or
No,
anything like
no,
that.
but
But
there's a difference between them being a an incompetent team and being a team that is hanging around maybe a few players away. Friend of the podcast, Darren Gonzalez, who writes for SB Nation Purple Row, had an article called "Are the Rockies Quietly Turning a Corner?" And one of the things he mentioned was their record since July 1st has been mediocre, and
Mhm.
mediocre is better than terrible.
Right.
Their OPS has jumped up by nearly 200 points since July, and they're pitching they're getting from Ryan McMahon, from uh, Rogers, from Tapia. It's not been terrible, and we're so used to terrible that
Mhm.
when shows up, it's Christmas morning.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It just shows that this Rockies there is a little bit of truth, I guess, to there's a saying of the Rockies are underperforming, and yes, that's true. But we know we've had some good players, and the pitching staff, the starting staff has been stellar. It's just a matter of this team is very inconsistent when it comes to offense and when it comes to road performance. We'll see what happens with this team going out to take on the Astros in San Francisco with this week. I mean, that's a tough stretch of ball games you got to go play there. But they've handled the Padres all season long. They're actually, I think the Padres have only beat them once or twice this year. The road series win the Rockies have is against the Padres, and they just need to be able to back up their starters when they're having a day. Herman Marquez has been incredible this year. Austin Gomber has really shown that he is a great arm and something to be valued. And that's when I mentioned the record. If it was a little bit better, you'd really be looking at these teams where the Cardinals aren't in a much better situation than the Rockies are in right now. They're both probably going to be in the same spot come playoff time, which is watching from home. So, but the Rockies did get a piece that they really love. And now I think we're seeing this idea of the Rockies have this starting pitching core. What do they do to build around it? You're probably losing your big bat and Trevor Story in free agency. They'll take the draft pick there. I think this idea is building that the team's going to go after and try to grab some free agents to build around this starting pitching staff to see where it can go. I don't necessarily know if that's the right call when you have a team that has 4 Cy Youngs and 4 MVPs on it, and another team that for some reason they're just come alive and have 70 wins in baseball and are
71.
71.
I just heard my late father from heaven say 71 was my
Yeah,
dad's a rabid
and,
Giants
and then
fan.
the Padres, of course, are still great. I mean, the Rockies have beat them, but the Padres are still a really good team. So
Yeah.
there's
But
hope, but it's interesting.
Well, I'll tell you, and the other thing, and this almost sounds condescending, but we see this happen every year. And boy, talk to the Mets about this. Some of the teams that you look at when they're going head to head, some of those teams you have to remember are major league teams with major league players who don't like to be told that they're tomato cans.
Right.
And
Exactly.
so you have, they're going to play San Francisco for 4 games. They're going to play Houston for 2 games. That's their next 6 games on the road. Yikes. Then
Right.
they play San Diego before they play Arizona and the minor league team that currently plays in Wrigley Field.
Mhm.
Now, they don't want to go into those places and hear people say what they have 4 games in San Francisco. Well, that's 4 easy wins for the Giants.
Right.
I don't want to get a TVMA rating for this explicit video, but sometimes you're like, well, hey, we're not supposed to win, so let's play loose. Look at what the Pirates and the Marlins have done to the Mets playoffs hopes this year.
Right.
Torpedoed them. And every year there is a team that just is the raspberry seed in the wisdom tooth of a contending team. And when you got a bunch of players, especially a team like the Rockies, where all season long they're being told, you're going to be traded, you're going to be traded, you're bad, you're bad. You know, like, they sound like, well, no, we don't have to worry about that now. No, let's
Right.
relax. We're in Denver,
Yeah.
a lovely city.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. That's what I hope the Rockies do. I hope throughout their schedule, when they go up against a team that has playoff implications, I hope they can just play spoiler, because they know going to Coors Field for the rest of the season is not going to be easy for anybody at this point. Maybe the Dodgers, because the Dodgers are the Rockies' kryptonite. They always have been, and they're just big brother in those ways. I'm the least confident in the Rockies when they play the Dodgers versus any other team. But I would love for the Rockies to be able to put it in a position where the Padres and the Dodgers have to slug it out for the wild card. I don't want to see the Dodgers at the top. Obviously, I don't want to see anybody but the Rockies, but it's better than the Dodgers winning another division title. Make them work for this. They're going to go out and spend all this money and bring in Trey Turner and Max Scherzer. Let's make them work for it and go there. And you know what? Those guys are going to have to roll through Denver and keep being this weird team that's basically Optimus Prime at home and like a used buggy on the road. It's fun. It makes it a little bit more fun. But I think that is one thing I do remember. It's like, yeah, the Rockies just played great at home. They just played the Cubs and the Marlins, where it's like, these are teams that I am confident that the Rockies are better than. The Rockies weren't better than the Cubs at the beginning of the year, but this club now, I hope the Rockies are a better team than them.
Well, you made the reference, for those of you listening to the audio podcast, which is being dropped on the 10th of August. The first segment was about the Frankenstein monster that is the Los Angeles Dodgers, of a team that is stitched together from pennant winners from other teams, trying to create this monster to just have them removed from the comparison of the Bobby Cox Braves. Like, well, they only won one title. They are going to do everything they can to make sure that is not said about this team. And as I mentioned, they could be a one and done team because they're still a wild card team. Right. And it is exactly a trip to Coors that can absolutely torpedo someone's ERA, but also their confidence when you come in, and it's not as bad as it was during the days of Dante Bichette and Andres Galarraga and Larry Walker, where a check swing broken bat was in the upper deck. They're basically playing in zero gravity. Right. They're on steroids with non-humidor balls. It's sort of like the only way to make that fair was to have the fences be 500 feet down the line, which meant all those triples there. Mm-hmm. But this is still a team that could really, really mess with a team's pitching staff, especially one with images of a division title dancing in their head.
Yeah, especially when you look at the schedule, both for the last homestand of the Rockies, they finish it up against the Nationals, but they open it with the Dodgers and the Giants both coming in for 3-game series against the Rockies in late September. Those games are going to have huge implications, and they know that they can't. If you got Armand Marquez dealing at Coors Field in a Rockies offense that's hitting, it is tough to win there. I mean, as much as I don't always buy into the Coors narrative, the Rockies do somehow, they know how to win at home. The pitching staff seems to love it there, and they find their hitting that they lose on the road. So those are massive series, and it's a lot of baseball left against the division.
And there's always a glut of free agents that are hanging around looking for a job.
Right.
And I'm sure a bunch of them will be hanging around near spring training next February. And the Rockies can nudge and say, hey, look, you want a 1-year contract and boost all of your stats.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about pitchers. I'm talking about let's say you're an outfielder. Let's say you're an infielder. Like, oh, man, I didn't hook on with anyone. Well, come to us. Get your OPS up. Cash in somewhere else. Hey, someone's going to cash in somewhere else because I think there's a better chance that Trevor Story is going to be somewhere else. I think I've got a better shot of being the starting shortstop. But then again, that being said, I already lost one of my sons in a bet because I was so positive he was going to be traded elsewhere. So I better watch what I say. I've not exactly been Nostradamus when it comes to the trades of the Colorado Rockies. John Gray is hanging around. God bless him for actually wanting to pitch there. He may have to take a psychiatric evaluation, but hey, I can see the challenge. You want to be the pitcher who wins in Coors. I get it. I get it. If you're alongside Marquez, right there, is he a free agent? Is Marquez
No, I mean he's under contract for a few more years. This Rockies
they have a 1-2 team.
Yeah, this Rockies starting rotation is really good. They're really a fifth arm away from having a solid rotation, and John Gray strikes people out, and which is great. What's the best way to neutralize the force field effect?
Exactly.
Make sure they can't hit the ball, and so that's the thing that this starting pitching staff is. The more I thought, hey, we should blow it up and let's move these arms because that's the best thing. But it's like, okay, I get it. You love these arms. Let's do something that the Rockies haven't done lately, which is bring in some people for as free agents, because they do have some pieces on this team that are great. Ryan McMahon and Brendan Rodgers are two great pieces for the infield. Connor Joe is proving to be a valuable utility player in this short time that we've gotten to see him. He's a great story this year. And CJ Crone has been awesome at first base.
The other day, he was incredible. He hit the 2 home runs the other day. He owned baseball.
He just won NL Player of the Week this week. He had a 2 home run day yesterday against the Marlins, one of which was a grand slam, 7 RBIs, just himself. I mean, and he's plays a decent enough first base, a position the Rockies haven't gotten production out of since Todd Helton. So I mean, it's been great. Someone tweeted a pretty funny thing where it's like, such a great nostalgia to see competent first baseman play at a irrelevant Rockies team again. I kind of laughed at that, and as all those years of Todd Helton hitting 300 with a ton of doubles and RBIs on a Rockies team that's like 20 games out.
Let's talk about Trevor Story, though. He's in a little bit of a hitting streak. Tell us what you're thinking about that. Is that a sign of someone who needed to relax after the trade deadline, after wondering, where am I going to be in St. Louis? Am I going to go to Philadelphia? Am I going to go to New York? Am I going to go to this? Am I going to go to that? And then he looked up, no, you're going to stay right here, and you get to dictate your own story at, no pun intended, at the end of the season. Well, tell us a little bit your thoughts of this hitting streak that he's in right now.
I mean, he's looked great. He's looked like the Trevor Story of the past, the one we all know and love. I don't know also if you saw, not only offensively has he been great, defensively he's been incredible, just like we all know. A beautiful diving play where he's on the ground, saves the ball, and then throws it to Brendan Rodgers, and they can get the out in the shift. I think you nail it there. I think he took that day off and realized that, you know what? I have 2 months left to improve my value. I think he was a little bit burned by the fact that trade talks cooled off, or teams weren't calling for what in my eyes is a top 5 shortstop in baseball. So I think he said, okay, let me go out and prove that I am Trevor Story. I am deserving of the money that I expect he'll get in the offseason and the praise that I get. So he's now hitting 11 straight games since the trade deadline, which was in the beginning of the month, and at least in his last 7 games, batting .444, slugging .815, OBP of .516, 6 RBIs, 2 home runs, 12 hits. I mean, and he's only struck out 3 times in that time frame. That's been the thing that's worried me the most about Trevor Story this year, was striking out a lot. But I think he's dealt with more of a mental struggle this year than a lot of people think. Losing Nolan was a big deal. I think that a story came out, and I mean, you saw him at the Derby. There was no Rockies player that came other than Herman that was out there. Nolan's out there. He knows that ESPN's running after Nolan as soon as he goes up to talk to Trevor Story. Those guys truly thought that they were gonna be the bedrock of the Rockies going forward. So I think losing him and then seeing the direction the team's gone in the past year and a half, 2 years, has really been tough for him. And then, to just be told why. I think the Rockies just should have been more open with him so he could have known a little bit more. But the Rockies front office is wacky, and they don't like to communicate. They don't like to talk to anybody. They don't like to talk to the media, and they clearly don't like to talk to their own players. But I think for Trevor Story, it means now, I'm going to play 2 more months of baseball. I'm going to go out and do the best I can because he's a professional. But we all know, he says the writing's on the wall. We all know what's going to happen. Now he can go out and see what the free agent market looks like, and the Rockies get this draft pick that they're really excited about.
No pressure on that draft pick. But but I guess what I got to say now is we have to start it. It is the Let's see. We're going to put it up here right now. We've got the Trevor Story hit watch. He's 45 games from Joe DiMaggio. Just 45 games away. And Trevor Story will match Joe DiMaggio's hit streak. And do you know what? I think it is. You know what? If you had talked to me before the trade deadline, I would have thought that there would have been as much of a chance of him tying Joe DiMaggio's hit streak as there was for him finishing the season with the Colorado Rockies. So it has been an unpredictable year for Trevor Story, but it has not been an unpredictable segment with Paul Holden, because I know you always bring the goods. And Paul, where can people listen to your terrific podcasts?
We are at Locked on Rockies over here. You can find us on all your favorite streaming services. Follow on Twitter. I'm usually good about tweeting during games. I'm a new to the whole live tweet game. I'm not as much of a Twitter vet as a lot of my other Locked on friends and hosts are. So, but we're at LO Rockies on Twitter. I'm at Paul Holden 33, and we're talking about the Rockies every day. You know, if you want to, the Rockies are an interesting and fun team. We do have some fun and some really interesting players. Plus, you never know what's going to happen when your team rolls into Coors Field.
Paul, thanks for joining the show.
Sully, thanks as always for having me. I'm always happy to be around another person that shares my first and middle name. Still my favorite thing about when we get to talk is how close the names are. But thanks for having me on, and thanks for talking Rockies.
You got it, man. Talk to you soon.
All right.
It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.